This is Philip Wyeth, here to announce the publication of my new novel, Reparations Core. This is my fourth book, and the third installment in the Reparations series. So today, I thought I would discuss the scope of these books, since they tap into a pretty heavy concept. Discussion about reparations for slavery seems to be more and more in the news lately, to the point that it might actually be one of the Democrat Party's major issues in 2020. My series takes place in the year 2028. With the premise being that in 2024, a Chinese-American woman is elected president on a reparations ticket. In order to determine who owes or gets paid what, a centralized supercomputer is set up to scan and aggregate all of humanity's collected documents. Here is one of the main thrusts established in the first book of this series, Reparations USA, that a surveillance state will spring out of the left's restitution for colonialism crusade. And how can anyone control where that kind of scrutiny will stop? So that first book is very much a frantic world-building exercise, but at the same time is more than just some reactionary white apology. How so? First, some of the real-world complexities and nuances are explored through the arc of two of my minority characters. And then, as good sci-fi often strives for, I offer a broader, more forward-thinking vision through a new religion called Modestianity. This group is not quite Luddite or Amish, but they do see the pitfalls of embracing all forms of new technology without at least assessing the pros and cons along the way. In the second book, Reparations Mind, I really dig into the searching, philosophical side of this religion as a means to ask deep questions that apply to us all today. For example, how do we retain our human dignity when the camera's amoral eye watches us with far less compassion than any god might? This book also dives deeper into what exactly causes us to believe what we do. For how many years has the education system been more about indoctrinating an army of sleeper cell change agents than simply helping children develop independent, critical thinking skills? The broader series plot centers around the 2028 election. Everything seemed to have been going well for the president, but in early October, a hacker group takes over the reparations supercomputer, and all of a sudden a sense of doubt sweeps across the country. People start to ask, is this reparations program really working? Have we opened a Pandora's box of retribution that will paralyze society and risk stopping all progress as mankind obsessively looks over its shoulder? Book 2 ends on this cliffhanger of uncertainty, for the cast as well as the country. And without revealing the election results, I'll say that the new release, Reparations Core, picks right back up again in the lame duck months of November and December. And if Book 2 was a heavy, deep dive of self-discovery for the characters, then this one reads more like a slow-burn political thriller. I kept the chapters shorter and moving along quickly, building readers up to major events both in the middle and at the end. We see the cast come face-to-face with previously unknown, and sometimes unpleasant aspects of themselves when forced to make difficult choices under pressure. And I think that's why this trilogy might appeal to people who at first bristle at the thought of reading books about reparations for slavery. Because the series is character-driven, and they're all treated fairly as we dig deep into questions of identity when living under the shadow of major ideological movements. These novels are very much a mirror of life today, as well as satirically imagining what might happen over the next decade. Is accounting for the sins of the past worth the risk of unleashing a tornado of vengeance that might never stop? Is there a specific amount of concession or capitulation that would satisfy old grievances? And if not, are you prepared for the consequences of the revolt if white guilt gave way to white survivalism or white existentialism? Because at the end of the day, these books are an act of faith on my part. I'm a white guy whose ancestors fought in the American Revolution and on both sides of the Civil War. But I moved from my home state of Virginia out to Los Angeles. I'm a creator and a business starter. The 1,000 or more hours I spent writing these books during the past 2 years could have been spent just making money, instead of racking my brain about how to dramatize the major issues facing us all. I could have written young adult fiction, urban fantasy, or the latest and most preposterous right-to-market trend, reverse harem. But I sensed a spiritual sickness and a political rift that could very well usher in balkanization here in America, if not a second civil war. I've said it before and I'll say it again now. Despite the twitching urges of our dormant bloodlust, we do not actually want something like that to happen. I don't know if the momentum toward conflict can be stopped. And here's another question. Would it really be called a civil war when nearly a quarter of the population is either foreign-born or first-generation immigrant? But maybe that's a can of worms for another day or another book. For now, I offer up Reparations USA, Reparations Mind, and Reparations Core, a series that's full of heart, humor, insights, unexpected twists, and enough futuristic flavors to satisfy fans of science fiction and political thrillers alike. You can find these books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, iTunes, and Smashwords. Signed paperbacks are also available for purchase on my website, philipwyeth.com. And just a heads up, I've got a brand new sci-fi series in the works that I'm very excited about. I hope to release the first installment of that in a few months. Subscribe to this channel or follow me on Twitter or Instagram for updates. Thanks very much for listening.